Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on paid family leave for foster care and adoption. I'm Adam Rossi with the Communication and Outreach Unit here at the Workers' Compensation Board. Joining me today is Courtney Valley from our Office of General Counsel. May is National Foster Care Month, so today we will be providing you with an overview of New York State's paid family leave benefit, specifically as it pertains to foster care and adoption. We will review the benefits for 2023, eligibility, how to apply, a walkthrough of the required forms and documentation, important information regarding COVID-19, as well as some frequently asked questions. We are going to be taking questions via the chat panel. As I mentioned earlier, in the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a little chat icon. Just click that and a box will pop up and you can enter your questions there. You can enter your questions at any point during the presentation. However, we will be waiting until the end of the presentation to answer any questions that come in. We will also be offering you a copy of this slide deck as well as a recorded version. Make sure you are signed up for email notifications so you're aware when those are available. And if you are not signed up for email notifications, we will be going over how to do that as well at the end of the presentation. Courtney will answer as many of your questions as she can. But if you have questions that we either don't get to today, or if you think of something after the session ends, we will be providing you with resources at the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, we are going to be focusing on paid family leave with a specific focus on how working parents can use it to bond with their newly adopted or foster child. Since its implementation in 2018, paid family leave benefits have been significantly enhanced to further improve the lives of working New Yorkers and their families, including providing more time off, more uses for paid family leave, and more financial security. In today's presentation, we'll start by discussing why we need paid family leave, and then cover some basics you need to know, including the 3 original uses of paid family leave, an overview of the benefits, how much it costs, who's eligible, and steps you need to take to request paid family leave for a newly adopted or fostered child. We'll review some frequently asked questions about this type of leave, discuss information regarding paid family leave in COVID-19, point you to some helpful resources, and then again, we will leave time at the end for questions, but you can enter your questions at any point today. So to get started, why do we need paid family leave? For too long, employees have struggled to maintain their jobs when they need to care for a loved one during a specific time of need, whether that's welcoming a new baby, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, or dealing with family pressures when a loved one is deployed abroad on active military service. More recently, many employees have been challenged by having to quarantine due to COVID-19 or to care for a minor dependent child who is subject to a mandatory quarantine or order of isolation. Employees in these situations face the stress of losing income when they need to take time off to help their family, and also fear their job may be gone when the family situation is over. In response to these needs, New York took action. In April of 2016, New York paid family leave, the nation's strongest and most comprehensive paid family leave policy, was signed into law. Paid family leave is employee-funded insurance that helps employees be there for their family when they're most needed. Because of paid family leave, workers across New York no longer have to choose between caring for their loved ones and their jobs, as we now have employee-paid insurance to help in these critical times. Paid family leave provides job-protected paid time off, so you can bond with a newly born, adopted, or foster child, care for a family member with a serious health condition, or assist loved ones when a spouse, domestic partner, child, or parent is called to active military service abroad. Paid family leave also now provides paid time off and job protection so you can care for yourself or your minor dependent child when under a mandatory order of quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. The order must be issued by the state of New York, the Department of Health, local board of health, or any government entity duly authorized to issue such order due to COVID-19. We will go into more detail on the uses of this later in the presentation, as they are a bit different from the others. In addition to paid time off, New York's paid family leave also has strong employee protections. You are guaranteed to return to the same or a comparable job after taking paid family leave. A comparable job is defined as a position with comparable employment benefits, pay, and other terms and conditions of employment. You are also guaranteed continuation of health insurance while out on paid family leave, on the same terms as if you had continued to work. If you contribute to the cost of your health insurance, you must continue paying your portion of the premium while on leave. Lastly, you are guaranteed protection from discrimination and retaliation. Requesting or taking paid family leave cannot be held against you. Today, as I said, we will focus on using paid family leave to bond with a newly adopted or foster child. Paid family leave provides parents time to bond with a new child within the first 12 months of the child's adoption or foster placement. This includes children adopted or placed in foster care in 2022, as long as the leave is taken and completed within the first 12 months of the adoption or foster placement. Mothers and fathers, including same-sex partners, are all provided the same opportunity to bond with their child. Parents who work for different employers can take paid family leave at the same time to bond with the same child. Parents who work for the same employer can take it at the same time unless their employer prohibits it. In that case, they can take leave separately over the first 12 months following the child's adoption or foster placement. Adopted or fostered children may feel like they've been abandoned, and they require time to adjust to their new surroundings and their new caretakers. Constants in their lives are now questionable, and having a healthy transition time is imperative. Paid family leave provides you with time needed to build a connection with your newly adopted or fostered child. For example, helping them adapt to their new home and neighborhood, spending time together to learn about your child's past, their likes and dislikes, and providing support and assistance with your child's transition, such as escorting your child to counseling sessions or attending the sessions with them. You may also be able to take paid family leave before an adoption or foster placement is finalized if you need to be absent from work for the adoption or placement to proceed. For example, if you need to appear in court prior to an adoption or foster placement. In these cases, documentation is needed to show that paid family leave is necessary to further the adoption or the foster placement. The second type of leave that may be relevant to families under paid family leave is caring for a family member with a serious health condition, if the child you are adopting or fostering does indeed have a serious health condition. A serious health condition is defined as an illness, injury, or condition that requires either inpatient care in a hospital, hospice, or residential facility, or continuing treatment or supervision by a healthcare provider. Unlike bonding leave, family care for an adopted or foster child who has a serious health condition is not limited within the first 12 months of that child's adoption or foster placement. And we do want to note that a COVID-19 diagnosis may qualify as a serious health condition. So now let's take a look at the specific benefits available to you under paid family leave. Eligible employees are able to take up to 12 weeks of paid family leave at 67% of their average weekly wage, capped at the 67% of the New York State average weekly wage. An employee's average weekly wage is based on their last 8 weeks of pay prior to taking paid family leave. For 2023, the New York State average weekly wage is $1,688.19. That means the maximum weekly benefit for 2023 is $1,131.08, which is $62.72 more than the maximum weekly benefit from 2022. It is important to note that employees can take this paid time off all at once or intermittently, but It must always be taken in full day increments. To estimate your wage benefit, you can use the 2023 calculator on the Paid Family Leave website. That link is shown right there on your screen. Paid family leave is fully funded through employee contributions. The contribution rate is reviewed annually and is subject to change by the New York State Department of Financial Services. In 2023, the payroll contribution is 0.455% of an employee's gross wages each pay period. The maximum annual contribution is $399.43. This is $24.28 less than in 2022. Employees earning less than the current average weekly wage of $1,688.19 will contribute less than the annual cap of $399.43, consistent with their actual wages. To estimate your deductions, you can also use the 2023 payroll deduction calendar, also on the Paid Family Leave website. So to summarize the benefit and contribution updates for 2023, the maximum weekly benefit is increasing from $1,068.36 to $1,131.08. Also, as of January 1st of 2023, employers may deduct at the rate of 0.455% of an employee's gross wages each pay period, but capped at an annual maximum of $399.43. And you can find more details on this at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/2023. So, now that we've covered the types of leave, the benefits, and the costs, let's now discuss who's covered and eligible for paid family leave. Most employees who work for private employers in New York State are covered under paid family leave. If you work for a public employer, your employer may opt into the program. If you're a public employee represented by a union, you may be covered if paid family leave is collectively bargained. For covered employees, your eligibility for taking paid family leave depends on meeting specific requirements for the amount of time you've worked for your employer. Full-time employees who regularly work 20 or more hours per week are eligible for paid family leave after 26 consecutive weeks of employment with the same employer. Part-time employees who work a regular schedule of fewer than 20 hours per week are eligible after working 175 days, which do not need to be consecutive. Citizenship and/or immigration status is not a factor in employee eligibility. In 2021, Governor Hochul signed an amendment to the workers' compensation law which expands coverage for domestic workers. Previously, domestic workers were only required to be covered if they worked at least 40 hours per week for their employer. As of January 1st in 2022, domestic workers who are hired directly by a private homeowner and who work 20 or more hours per week for that private homeowner are required to be covered for paid family leave. These workers are eligible once they have been in employment with that employer for 26 consecutive weeks. Also, effective January 1st of 2023, siblings are now included in family members eligible to receive family care under paid family leave. Please check with your employer for details on when this goes into effect for your policy. Paid family leave coverage is not optional for eligible employees. You can waive coverage if you regularly work 20 or more hours per week, but won't be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks, or if you regularly work fewer than 20 hours per week and won't work 175 days in a 52-week period. Seasonal workers are a good example of this, as they may work full-time, but only for 3 months out of the year. If you meet the criteria for waiving coverage, your employer must provide you with a waiver form, which is also available on the Paid Family Leave website. If you waive coverage, you will not make contributions and you will not be eligible for paid family leave benefits. Employers should keep a copy of your waiver on file. If your schedule changes such that you no longer qualify for a waiver, your waiver will be automatically revoked within 8 weeks of the schedule change. You can also voluntarily revoke a waiver at any time. If your waiver is revoked, your employer will begin taking paid family leave contributions and collect any retroactive amounts due. Now we'll go over how to request paid family leave for bonding with your newly adopted or foster child, as well as how disputes and discrimination issues will be handled. When you're ready to request leave to care for your newly adopted or foster child, there are 3 basic steps. Step 1 is to notify your employer at least 30 days before the start of your leave if it's foreseeable or as soon as possible. Step 2 is to complete the request forms. Step 3 is to send all the required forms to the insurance carrier. The insurance carrier must pay or deny your request within 18 calendar days of receiving the completed request or the first day of leave, whichever is later. You must submit your completed request package to your employer's insurance carrier within 30 days after the start of your leave to avoid losing benefits. Now we'll take a look at each of these steps a little more in depth. Step 1, inform your employer. Let your employer know at least 30 days before your leave will start if it's foreseeable. For example, you may be planning to take paid family leave immediately after your adoption or foster placement date, or perhaps you will choose to take it at a later date. You can take it anytime within the first 12 months of your child's adoption or foster placement, but you do need to notify your employer as soon as you know the dates you want to take the leave. If you need to take bonding leave unexpectedly, and 30 days notice isn't possible, for example, in the case of a last-minute adoption or foster placement, notify your employer as soon as possible. Step 2 is to complete the required paid family leave request forms. For bonding leave, your request will contain 2 forms. The first form, the request for paid family leave, which is form PFL1, gives your insurance company information about you. The second form, which is the bonding certification, form PFL2, requires information to confirm an adoption or foster placement has occurred or will occur. You can get paid family leave request forms from your employer's insurance carrier, or directly from paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/forms. Let's take a look at how to request paid family leave using the form PFL1. Every employee who is requesting paid family leave starts with this form. It asks for basic information about you and the leave you want to take, and has a section for your employer to complete as well. You will submit this form to your employer's insurance carrier along with other completed forms for the type of leave you are taking. Form PFL1 has 2 parts. You are responsible for filling out Part A, and your employer is responsible for filling out Part B. The first section of Part A covers your personal information, including your address, your social security number or tax identification number, and your date of birth. You must also state why you are requesting the leave and how it pertains to you. Next, indicate if you expect your leave to be a continuous period or intermittent. You may not know all of the dates for certain, so you can indicate that they are estimated and update your insurer if a change is needed. Finally, you must provide information about your employment, including your employer's location and phone number, your date of hire, your average gross weekly wage, whether or not you have more than one employer, if you are taking paid family leave from that other employer, and if you are currently receiving workers' compensation lost wage benefits. You then need to sign and date Part A of the form and give it to your employer, who will then complete Part B of the form. Before giving this form to your employer, make sure to make a copy of Form PFL-1, and I'm going to explain why right now. Your employer has 3 business days to fill out Part B of Form PFL-1 and return it to you. If your employer does not return the form, you can still proceed with your paid family leave request. Next, you must complete the bonding certification, which is Form PFL-2. You will need to provide information about the adopted or fostered child, including the date of birth, whether the child lives with you, and evidence of your relationship with the child. For foster care purposes, along with the bonding certification form, you must provide proof of your relationship to the child with a supporting document. This can be in the form of either a letter of placement issued by the county or city Department of Social Services or a local volunteer agency, or if the employee is not named in the placement document, submit a copy of the document evidencing the placement and a second document verifying the relationship to the parent named in the document. So for example, a marriage certificate, civil union documents, or domestic partnership documents. For adoption purposes, along with the bonding certification form, you must provide proof of your relationship to the child with a supportive documentation in either the form of a court document indicating that an adoption is in process or being finalized, or when leave is taken prior to completion of the adoption, a document evidencing that the adoption process is underway, including but not limited to a signed statement from an attorney, adoption agency, or adoption-related social service provider that the employee is in the process of adopting a child. If the second parent is not named in the documents in paragraphs 1 or 2 of this subdivision, the employee must provide a copy of the document evidencing the adoption and a second document verifying the relationship to the parent named in the document. Again, for example, marriage certificate, civil union document, or domestic partnership documents. Step 3 is to send all forms to your employer's insurance carrier. Before submitting your forms, make sure to make a copy of Form PFL-1 and Form PFL-2. You will submit Form PFL-1 and Form PFL-2 to your employer's paid family leave insurance carrier or directly to your employer if they are self-insured. The address can be found in Part B, Question 13 of Form PFL-1. This is the section your employer completed. If the carrier's address is not on the form, ask your employer or contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303 for assistance. The insurance carrier must pay or deny within 18 calendar days of receiving your completed request or the first day of leave, whichever is later. If for some reason your paid family leave request is denied, or you have another claim-related dispute, such as the amount of your benefits or timeliness of a carrier's decision, you may request to have the denial reviewed by a neutral arbitrator. Your insurance carrier, or your employer if they're self-insured, will notify you of the reason for denial and provide you with information about requesting arbitration. Arbitration for paid family leave is handled by NAM, National Arbitration and Mediation. More information on arbitration is available at nyspfla.namadr.com. As mentioned earlier, your employer may not discriminate against you for requesting or taking paid family leave, and you are guaranteed job protection with the same or a comparable job upon return from paid family leave. If your employer does not return you to your same or a comparable job, terminates you, reduces your pay and/or benefits, or disciplines you in any way as a result of you requesting or taking paid family leave, you can file a discrimination claim with the Workers' Compensation Board. An administrative law judge may order an employer to reinstate an employee, pay any lost wages, pay attorney's fees, and pay up to $500 in penalties. The process and forms are available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, or you can call the Paid Family Leave Helpline for assistance at 844-337-6303. There are a few frequently asked questions about paid family leave and other leave policies that may be helpful for you to know, so we're going to go over those real quickly. Excuse me. There are several similarities between New York's paid family leave and the Federal Family Medical Leave Act. Both provide leave for bonding with a child, caring for a family member with a serious health condition, and assisting when a family member is deployed on active military service abroad. You are also guaranteed that you will return to the same or a comparable position, and your health insurance will continue on the same terms as if you had continued to work. If you contribute to the cost of your health insurance, you must continue to pay your portion of the premium cost while on leave. However, there are a number of key differences. PFL is paid, FMLA is not paid. Almost all private employers will carry PFL insurance. FMLA does not include insurance, and it has a 50-employee threshold for eligibility. The length of time you must work is different. In PFL, if you regularly work 20 or more hours a week, you must be in employment for 26 consecutive weeks for that employer. And if you regularly work fewer than 20 hours per week, you must work 175 days for the same employer, which do not need to be consecutive. For FMLA, you must have worked for a full year and 1,250 hours in the last 52 weeks to qualify. The biggest distinction may be that under New York's paid family leave, you are taking leave to care for someone else, not for your own health condition. FMLA allows you to take leave for your own health condition. PFL is only taken in full day increments. FMLA may be taken hourly. Also under PFL, you do not need to use other paid time off first. So how does paid family leave work with other maternity or paternity leave policies? To be compliant with the paid family leave law, covered employees must have coverage for at least 12 weeks of paid family leave at 67% of an employee's pay up to the statewide cap. Employers are free to supplement paid family leave with additional benefits if they'd like. Employers can add to those benefits up to a maximum of an employee's full wages. The combined benefit from the employer and the paid family leave policy may not exceed an employee's full wages. Employers can require paid family leave to run concurrently with their own maternity and paternity leave policies, but you should check with your employer about how these benefits interact. What if the child being adopted or fostered is not an infant? There is no age limit on taking paid family leave to bond with an adopted or fostered child. Again, just keep in mind that bonding leave must be completed within the first year of the child's adoption or foster placement. As we mentioned earlier, there are 2 additional uses of paid family leave that took effect under emergency legislation former Governor Cuomo signed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The legislation allows for a combination of New York paid family leave and disability benefits if you are under an order of mandatory or precautionary quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. This is the only time you may receive paid family leave and disability benefits at the same time. It also gives you access to paid family leave if your minor dependent child is under an order of mandatory or precautionary quarantine or isolation due to COVID-19. You may apply for a combination of paid family leave and disability benefits to receive your full pay up to a cap for some or all of the quarantine period. You may be eligible to receive 67% of your pay up to the maximum weekly benefit of $840.70. Disability benefits will make up the difference in your salary up to a maximum weekly benefit of $2,043.92 for a combined total of $2,884.62 per week. There's no waiting period, and you will have job protection throughout the quarantine. Depending on the size of your employer, paid sick leave benefits may also be available and must be used prior to any paid family leave and disability benefits. We do want to note this does not apply if you work for a public employer or an employer with 100 or more employees, because those employers are required to provide 14 days of paid sick leave. If you request leave for your minor dependent child's quarantine or isolation, you may be eligible to receive 67% of your pay up to a maximum weekly benefit of $840.70. More detailed information about taking paid family leave for your quarantine or your child's can be found at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19. There, you'll also find information about New York State's COVID-19 paid sick leave requirements, FAQs, application forms, and more. So now as you think about paid family leave and how it may help you and your family, there are resources available to assist you. Complete details on paid family leave are available at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, along with other resources, including paid family leave request forms and fact sheets, weekly deduction and benefit calculators, updates for 2023, and information about paid family leave quarantine leave benefits. If you're thinking about taking paid family leave soon, you can download the forms now and get started filling them out. You can also contact the Paid Family Leave Helpline at 844-337-6303 for assistance. If you're not already subscribed for email updates on paid family leave, including information on upcoming webinars, you can subscribe by clicking the Get Updates button on the bottom of the PFL homepage. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss New York's paid family leave with you. We will now use the rest of your time to take your questions. Please keep in mind the board is unable to provide legal advice, which includes guidance about what you should do in specific situations. If you do have specific questions or concerns about a request for paid family leave, please contact your disability and paid family leave insurance carrier, as they are the entity that makes the decision to pay or deny your benefits. So I'm going to go back to this slide here with our contact information so you can have that available to you if you want to jot it down. Again, we will be providing you with a copy of this slide deck as well as a recorded presentation. Just make sure you're signed up for email updates so you know when those are available. I am now going to hand it over to Courtney as she is going to review the questions that have come in. And again, if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box. And Courtney, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Adam. I see one question right now talking about with the expiration of COVID-19 set for May 11th, how is COVID affected in the PFL program? So assuming you're talking about kind of the federal expiration of the COVID-19 pandemic, like designation, the legislation providing for quarantine leave for COVID-19 does not contain an end date. So there isn't an end date to the legislation, which means it's going to be in effect until there's either a sunset provision added or it's repealed. But keep in mind that it only provides benefits when there is an actual quarantine order. So the person has to actually be under an order of quarantine or isolation in order to receive benefits. Okay, I see a question here about the NAM requirements in order to represent a client in New York State paid family leave arbitration. And I am actually not 100% sure of the answer, so I don't want to give you incorrect information. But if you go to NAM's website, they have a very robust website, and that's efla.namadr.com. And that's the paid family leave website. You can also kind of look at NAM, and they should have requirements on their page about who can be a representative in an arbitration. I am not 100% sure of the answer, so I just don't want to give you incorrect information.
All right, thanks, Courtney. I see a question here on where on the website will we be able to get a copy of the presentation to reference at a later date. If you go to paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, I believe there's a webinar section, and in that section, you'll find, along with the a list of upcoming webinars and links to join as well, we'll have links for a PDF copy of the presentation as well as the recorded version. There may be one up now for foster care, but it would be for 2022. So while some of the information is still relevant, some of the benefit costs, the contribution rates, things like that will be different. So I would suggest holding off and waiting for the 2023 one for that sort of thing. But if you just want general information on PFL, we already have one up from 2022 on foster care, as well as other copies of slide decks that we've done from previous webinars for employees, employers. And we also, if you go to our YouTube page, which I don't know the exact link, but if you go to youtube.com and you type in New York State Workers' Compensation Board, you should find our channel. We have dozens upon dozens of previously recorded webinars and other presentations on paid family leave. So those may be helpful for you as well. Courtney, can you speak real quick on if someone wants to request paid family leave for bonding with an adopted or foster child where the adoption took place maybe in November or December of 2022, but they want to take the leave in 2023?
Yeah, sure. So bonding leave, whether it's for birth, adoption, or foster care, can be taken at any time within the first 12 months following either the birth or the placement. But it does also have to be completed within that time. So if you are placed with a foster child or you adopt a child kind of late in the year, you have pretty much the entire year until that 12-month mark after to take the leave. But you do have to complete any leave. That doesn't mean you have to take all 12 weeks of leave, but it does mean that any bonding leave that you did want to take for that child, you have to complete it by that 12-month mark. So you can't start it at 11 months and then try to take 12 weeks. That you're not allowed to under the law. But if you want to take the leave, it's any time within the first 12 months. It just has to be taken and completed within that 12 months.
All right, that seems to be all we have today. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Courtney for taking the time to answer the questions. Before you sign off, you will be directed to take a short survey on today's presentation. We do ask that you please complete that. It helps us in future presentations and lets us know how we're doing. So we appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. Also, again, before we sign off, I just want to remind you to sign up for paid family leave news, including information on future webinars, to your inbox. Visit paidfamilyleave.ny.gov, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and select the Get Updates button. And again, we also distribute information via social media, so make sure you're following the Workers' Compensation Board on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Again, that YouTube page is great with lots and lots of information and recordings there. Again, thank you all for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.